Good morning, Year 5. Welcome back to another English lesson. So this week we're going to move on to a new stimulus and it's called junk. And before we start looking about what junk is all about, I'd like us to write the date in the LO in our English books. So the date is Monday, the 1st of March, 2021. And the LO is to write a recipe inspired by Jackhammer Soup. So pause the video and do that nice and neatly for me in your English books now. Okay, well done everyone. So let's have a look at the signs of success before we move on. So, to infer what happens in the video junk, to identify the structure and language used in instructional writing, and to write my own recipe inspired by Jackhammer Soup. So, we're going to start with our inference skills. And I've got 3 pictures on the screen here for you now. So you've got lots to look at. And I want you to infer what is going to happen in our story junk. So I've got some key questions for you to look at, and they are: who is the story about? What do the images tell you? And what does the title tell you? So just take a few seconds to look at all of these pictures and think about those questions and then predict what the story might be about. Okay, so you should have all thought about what junk might involve, and now we're going to look at the pictures a bit more in depth. So I'm going to start with this one on the top left. So here we can see someone who might be our main character, and I'm not sure if it's a girl or a boy, but we know that this person is in our story junk. And it looks like they're holding something which appears to be dripping, and it looks like they're going to put it in their mouth with the way their head is tilted. This second circle here circles a cauldron of some sort or a bucket, which is also dripping. So that makes me think that this item here has come from this bucket or has been dipped in this bucket. Okay, and have a look at the picture. Is there anything else you can see that helps you think about what the story is going to be about? Okay, moving on to the next picture. So this involves our title junk, and underneath there's some sort of mound with different objects or different pieces of junk maybe on top. So we've got a bit of a wheel, we've got a tower, so like lots of barbed wire. So it could be junk in a junkyard maybe. And then on the top right, we have a really interesting one. And it looks like someone's writing in a book, and it says Jackhammer Soup, 300 servings. So that makes me think this person is writing a recipe for Jackhammer Soup to serve 300 people. And then we've got some ingredients. We've got gloss paint, iron fillings, cement, and nuts and bolts. So this isn't our usual recipe, so that makes me think there's something different about this video and their ingredients they're using to write a recipe. Okay. So using your inference skills based on these images, I'd like you to write your prediction in your English books. And I want you to use the stem sentence as always. I infer that. I think this because. So for example, I've done a basic one underneath and it says, I infer that junk is about a person who likes to eat junk. I think this because the images suggest he is writing a soup recipe using ingredients such as cement and nuts and bolts. So pause the video and write your inference, your prediction in your English books now for me, and then we'll watch the video and see if you were correct. Okay, so I'm going to put my video back to the beginning, and I just want you to watch and observe what the story is all about and the key events that happen.
If Jasper O'Leary excelled at one thing, when it came to junk food, he was clearly the king. found less healthy things for his plate. He'd eat butter with lard and drink vinegar straight. This is when Jasper got really bizarre, like eating car tires dipped in piping hot tar. His reputation for junk food just couldn't be tarnished. Like Jackhammer Soup with a barbed wire garnish. His doctor said, "Son, let us pray for your health." So he tried salad once. But it just burned his mouth. So he stuck with the junk and made a new goal: to swallow an oil tanker's cargo hold whole. The day that he died saw a closed cemetery. This is no place for old Jasper O'Leary. So they took him elsewhere on that night, cold and grim, to the outskirts of town, to a place just for him. Yes, they took him elsewhere. Then they read his last rites. It's the junkyard where Jasper now spends his nights.
Okay, so that was our video that we're going to be using this week to do different writing activities with. So the main summary of the story is that our main character is called Jasper O'Leary, which is the person in this picture here. And Jasper O'Leary had an unhealthy obsession with eating junk. And this junk food was not burgers and chips. Instead, it was hot tar, cement, metal, and more. His obsession got worse and worse until a doctor raised concern. Jasper tried to change his ways and eat a salad, but it just burned his mouth. After continuing to eat junk, Jasper's life eventually came to an end and his body was left in the local junkyard, where he now spends his nights. So that is the story of Jasper O'Leary, and we're going to be using it today and for the rest of the week to do different activities. So your first activity to help you with your recipe is that I want you to watch the video again and write either a list or a mind map of all the junk items you see. And by junk, I mean the sort of metal items like I've put here on my mind map. So I've got nuts and bolts, cement, metal hooks, iron fillings, gloss paint, rubber tyres and hot tar. So I'd like you to produce something like this, and you can steal these ones, for example, to add to yours. So we're just going to watch it again, and I want you to write down as many items of junk as you can see to use in your recipe later on in the lesson. So I'm going to get the video up again, so you can make a mind map or write a list.
If Jasper O'Leary excelled at one thing, when it came to junk food, he was clearly the king. In his teens, he found less healthy things for his plate. He'd eat butter with lard and drink vinegar straight. This is when Jasper got really bizarre, like eating car tires dipped in piping hot tar. His reputation for junk food just couldn't be tarnished. Like Jackhammer Soup with a barbed wire garnish. His doctor said, "Son, let us pray for your health." So he tried salad once. But it just burned his mouth. So he stuck with the junk and made a new goal: to swallow an oil tanker's cargo hold whole. The day that he died saw a closed cemetery. This is no place for old Jasper O'Leary. So they took him elsewhere on that night, cold and grim, to the outskirts of town, to a place just for him. Yes, they took him elsewhere, and they read his last rites. It's the junkyard where Jasper now spends his nights.
Okay, so before we move on, quickly look at the mind map on the screen and add any that you don't have just to use for your recipe. Okay, and here are some more examples for you to add to your mind map. So pause the video now if you'd like to add any of these to use in your recipe. Okay, so as I said, your task for today is to write your own revolting recipe like Jack O'Leary's Jackhammer Soup. So we're going to have a look at George's marvellous medicine recipe to look at the structure and the language. So just pause the video and think about the way this recipe here is structured and the language that's used, because you're going to need to write your own in the same way. So pause the video and have a little think about the structure and the language of George's marvellous medicine. Okay, so as you can see here, I've annotated George's marvellous medicine recipe. So all recipes need a title telling us what the recipe is going to be for. So here we've got how to make George's marvellous medicine. So that tells us straight away what the recipe is for. Okay, and then we've got the audience, which is whoever would like to make the recipe. So to start with, we list the ingredients. So it says you will need, and then we've got bullet points of listed ingredients you will need to make this recipe. So when you make your own, the first part of your recipe needs to be the ingredients. And you can do bullet points, and you could also either say ingredients or you will need. Then we've got the method, which comes underneath the ingredients. And when we write the method, we usually use numbers to instruct the reader of how to do things in a chronological order. So we've got 7 steps here, and the reader knows to do them in this order to get the final product. And then the sort of language that's used is quite instructional. So it tells someone exactly what to do. So for example, we've got collect, empty, stir, fill, give. So they're not saying, please, could you go and collect? They're saying, go, like, collect, okay? So it's instructions, it's straight to the point, and it's quite abrupt. So we've got collect, empty, stir, and so on. And then lastly, you could have an image of the ingredients or the final product on the recipe as well. So some of you might have made recipes at home with your families, and there is usually a picture of what the final product should look like, or sort of a display of all the ingredients you need. So that is the structure and the layout and the language you'll need to use today. So quickly take a few seconds to have a look before we move on. Okay, and before I ask you to do your own, I've made my own little recipe based on Jackhammer Soup, and it's called How to Make Screwdriver Soup. So I've kind of taken inspiration from junk and thought about a revolting recipe I could make using junk. So as you can see, I've got my title, like we said. I've got the you will need and bullet points. So it says you will need chopped rubber tire, 1000 millilitres of hot tar, 500 grams of nuts and bolts, 1 screwdriver, and nails to season. So that would normally be like salt and pepper to season, but instead, because we're making a revolting recipe, it says nails to season. And then we've got our method. So we've got 4 steps which come in order. And step 1 is take a large cauldron and start boiling your tar on a high heat. So again, I've got my instructional language, take. Number 2, once it is bubbling, add your chopped rubber tire, screwdriver and nuts and bolts and stir well. Step 3, season your metal nails to your taste. Season with your metal nails to your taste. And step 4, serve with an optional side of cement for that extra flavour and enjoy. Okay, so it sounds like a recipe, but it's obviously a revolting recipe inspired by our stimulus of junk. So take a few more seconds to have a look at this example before you write your own, and you can come back to it if you need to use it for inspiration. So here I've said I'd like you to have a go. You can decide what the soup will be called. You can decide the ingredients using your mind map of junk, and you can decide how many steps it has and what you want this person to do. So pause the video, have a go at writing your own. You can decide your own title, ingredients and steps, and I just want you to have fun with this because it's something a little bit different and everyone enjoys writing a recipe. So remember, you can look back at my example and you can look back at the structure if it helps you as well, but I've kind of laid it out how you will in your books. So pause the video and have a go at writing your own revolting recipe using your junk vocabulary. Off you go. Okay, well done Year 5. Please post your revolting recipes on Class Dojo for me to enjoy. I might even make some of them. And I'll see you again soon for another English lesson at tomorrow actually. See you tomorrow. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you for all your hard work today. And as I said, I'll see you again tomorrow for our next lesson on junk.